Well, thank you very, very much for coming. I'm Katie Kimball, and I'm here because I'm a member of this parish. I'm here also because I edit a blog at kitchenstewardship.com where I write about real food and natural living and keeping it real in the kitchen. And I'm also here mostly because I hate divorce. I hate it. I think it's an evil thing in our society. I think it hurts children, it hurts men, it hurts women, it hurts families and marriages. And I think it's just one of the worst things that's going on in our culture right now. And one of the antidotes to divorce has got to be natural family planning. Statistically, just a few tiny percent of couples who practice NFP end up getting divorced, compared to 50% and more in the rest of society. Right? So clearly, couples who choose natural family planning are doing something right. And my hope with this panel is that that is what you'll be able to leave here with today, with some really solid foundational knowledge about what natural family planning is, where the church, the Catholic Church, stands on that, why it's a good thing for marriages and for families. And I'm really, really excited to host this panel and these people. We've got teachers from 3 different methods here, which is a kind of unique opportunity, I think, to come together and be able to hear from the Creighton Model, the Billings Ovulation Method, and then the couple-to-couple league Sympto-Thermal Method. If that was Greek to you, it won't be by the end of the night. Don't worry. So the teachers and I got together on Skype before this, and we kind of nailed down what we wanted to present to you as the definition of natural family planning, so that we can start with the foundation. And we said that that is analyzing a woman's cycle and physical clues to determine the couple's mutual fertility. Then choosing whether to seek or avoid pregnancy in a given cycle by timing intercourse appropriately based on the couple's discernment. Now that's a mouthful, but again, we're going to unpack all of that kind of throughout the night. It's pretty important for me to say that this is not a Cliff Notes NFP class. You won't be able to leave here and practice NFP at home yet, but you should leave knowing like what method would be the best fit for your personality, your state in life, you know, what's going on with your schedule right now, or whatever. At least you'll just have a lot of knowledge to go on. A lot of people seem to take issue with the Catholic Church's stance on contraception. You'll hear that a lot, like, come on, what does the church have against contraception? Why not? And really, it's important to know that 100 years ago, less than 100 years ago, all Christian religions were completely against any form of contraception. So just that short time ago, the question would not have been, why not contraception? It would have been, why contraception? Like, that was just outside of the realm of normalcy. So we are unfortunately fighting an uphill battle, living in the culture that we live in, where when people get married, you know, you choose your wedding dress, you choose your reception hall, you choose your contraception. It's like just one of the options on the table, and it's completely acceptable in our culture. But that's not God's plan for marriage at all. So we live in this culture where it starts out that way, and then 50% of couples are divorcing. It's again, divorce is just like one of these choices. And the culture is telling us that love is not eternal, that it's temporary, which is not God's plan. You know, the culture is telling us that marriage is cheap and quick and easy instead of holy and wonderful. The culture is telling us that children are to be feared instead of as a gift or a blessing. And most couples who practice natural family planning are fighting against that and saying that marriage is holy, that it's beautiful, that children are a gift from God. And again, that's what we're going to try to share with you today. Completely outside of religion, so I write about like natural living and chemicals and like what you do and don't want to put on your skin and in your mouth and all that stuff. And so that contraception really plays into that. And I want to share with you real quick, again, completely religion aside, God aside, why contraception is not a good idea for women. So oral contraceptives have a pretty intense and negative impact on the earth. Our water supply currently, particularly in college towns, I just learned, has a really high rate of estrogen. And we are drinking that, and our children are drinking that every day, and it freaks me out. You can't filter it out. The best filter around can't get out those hormones. And it's partly, in large part, because of the women who are taking oral contraception and then you know, whatever, gets in the water. The impact on a woman's body is similarly devastating. A lot of people don't know this at all. Like, OBGYNs are constantly prescribing contraception. They don't say, by the way, ladies, this will probably make you irritable. Bummer. This will probably decrease your sex drive, women. Bummer. There's an increased risk of quite a few diseases, including breast cancer. And a lot of women end up struggling against infertility after they've tried to turn their fertility off for so many years. Then they end up fighting to get it back when they finally decide they want children. And it's really a tragedy. You know, I'm sure you're nodding your head thinking, yeah, I know someone who's struggled against infertility. I know a ton of people who can't get pregnant or who have miscarried. You know, there's a lot of longer term ramifications that people aren't always thinking about. And so, besides all of this, the church, the Catholic Church, says that contraception is not a good idea, no matter what kind, whether it's the pill, IUDs, shots, condoms, whatever, that it's not a good idea because it goes against the covenant of marriage. That marriage says there's one man, there's one woman, we give ourselves 100%, fully, totally, completely to each other. And contraception says, whoop, I'm going to put a wall in between the man and the woman, and they're going to give such and such percent minus their fertility. And unfortunately, that starts to erode and corrode marriages pretty quickly. And God's plan for marriage is not that. God's plan is that, you know, what man has brought together, no one else shall take apart, right? God's plan is not divorce. And unfortunately, it's not really working out that way in our culture, but we can fix that. So is NFP just Catholic contraception then? That's kind of another issue that people say, well, okay, so if you can't contracept, why can you use natural family planning? Isn't that just another way to avoid having children? It's going to meet the same end as any of those forms of contraception. And I will, hang on. Let's see if I can figure out my technology here. There we go. This is a pretty popular video on YouTube.
Hi, I'm a contraceptive.
And I'm natural family planning.
We pretty much do the same thing.
Actually, we're really opposite.
No, we both stop unwanted pregnancies.
Well, my users are open to life. They simply abstain when they have a good reason.
My users get to have sex whenever they want to.
So do mine.
Well, mine's worry-free.
Well, mine's worry-free about fertility-altering chemicals.
Ooh.
Or that you didn't take the pills in the right order. Or that your wife might get a bit testy from hormone manipulation.
Ooh.
Or that your libido might decrease.
Ooh. Well, my users don't have to talk about when to have sex.
So your users don't talk to each other much.
So?
I just think that talking is a plus in a relationship.
Well, we all have different values.
Then I guess we don't do the same thing.
Guess not.
So if you could hear that at all, hopefully that was better than anything I could have said. The Catholic Church is not against medicine, right? Catholic Church doesn't say don't take medication to heal your body. But contraception is not healing a working system, it's breaking a working system. It's going against a fertile system that's working absolutely perfectly. And it separates the unity of man and wife in a marriage and the possibility of children, which, again, God created families to be a family, necessarily to have children. Marriage, family, and God-willing children. Another reason that the church says that contraception is not a good idea is that many forms of contraception are abortifacient. The way that most hormonal contraception works is that the lining of the uterus is made to not accept a fertilized egg. So the egg can be fertilized, God plants an immortal human soul in it, and then it has no hospitable place to rest, and it dies. And a doctor will say, it passes out, or expels, or whatever. It dies. The child dies. And so what a horrible thing. I mean, the Catholic Church says, no, we don't want that. We don't want that for your marriage. We don't want that for our society. It goes against the wedding vows, where you say, I give myself completely to each other, fully and unconditionally. And in a Catholic ceremony, we say, do you accept children lovingly from God, as a gift from God? I do, says the couple. I don't, says the pill. Lastly, I just want to address, using a really good analogy from Dr. Janet Smith, I want to address the issue of contraception and NFP having basically the same end. That basically, since they both help people avoid children, it's pretty much the same thing. And Janet Smith says no, and the analogy that she uses is that when someone is trying to lose weight, there are lots of options, right, to lose weight. And some of them are probably healthier than others. One could reduce their calories, one could exercise more, one could eat a ton and then go purge it in the bathroom. Now I'm guessing that that last one made you think, that is not a very acceptable option, right? That's a disease called bulimia. And that's bad for your body, it hurts your esophagus, and it makes you ill, right? It's not good. And morally, I would put forth that bulimia is bad because it allows you to be a glutton and then not feel any of the consequences. The difference between contraception and NFP is exactly the same, right? When you're contracepting, you're being allowed to be a glutton, to be a sexual glutton, and yet not have any of the consequences of that gluttony, right? And it's bad for the woman's body, it's bad for the marriage, in the same way as bulimia is really not a good idea for dieting, right? So, again, natural family planning is the way to be appropriately married appropriately within the church. And I am so excited to invite these people. Now I got to introduce my awesome panel here. We have, representing the Couple-to-Couple League's Sympto-Thermal Method, Tom and Ann Feldposh. And Georgia Schmitz is next in black and white there, and she teaches the Creighton Model. And at the end is Christy Brown, who teaches the Billings Ovulation Method with her husband Paul. Couldn't be here today, but and Christy is going to rock the house with a little bit more foundational knowledge here.
This is just a short presentation, just an intro to natural family planning, in terms of more what Katie touched on, some of what the church is teaching, just some of an overview of what it is. Like Katie said, I'm not going into any of the methods specifically here. I'm just trying to go a little farther in depth to what natural family planning is. So I'm really wishing I could get this other thing off here. So, but I'm going to basically read through some of these too. So when we're looking at ideal family planning, like when we're looking at how to, we want to plan our family, we're obviously looking at something that's highly effective. We want something that's safe. We want something that can be used through all stages of our life, if that our reproductive life. Most of us here, I'm assuming, want to know how to avoid using contraception. We want to be able to avoid conception when we want to. We want to be able to achieve conception when we want to. Something that's free of all side effects and does not disrupt the integrity of the act, the marital act. So when we look at NFP and marriage within the confines of the Catholic Church, what our vows are saying, and Katie touched on this a little bit, but our vows of what we are professing to one another, it's married love is a free, it's total, lifelong, it's faithful, and it's fruitful. When we cooperate with God's design, we mirror the love that God has for us in our marriages. NFP allows couples to respect all aspects of one another's personhood, including their fertility. So we're not putting something that between us that's saying, yep, I accept you, but I don't want any of that. We're cooperating in that design. God's love for us was giving himself to us totally, completely, faithfully, fruitfully. And this excerpt here comes from Humanae Vitae. I don't know if any of you have had the chance to read that, but it's wonderful. That's what the quote Paul VI wrote on, and that's where we get a lot of our foundation and teaching for natural family planning for what the whole goal of marriage is. And this is talking about the need for discernment. So it follows that they are not free, second paragraph, to act as they choose in the service of transmitting life, as if we were wholly up to them to decide what is the right course to follow. On the contrary, they are bound to ensure that what they do corresponds with the will of God, the Creator. So this is going and putting it back on us, saying it's our responsibility to discern with our husband or our wife, our spouse, with God on what's best for us. One of the biggest questions I get is, well, how many kids should we have? When should we start having children? What do you know? And I can't, as a teacher, answer that for you. I can tell you and send you back to what one of our wonderful encyclicals say. Can tell you to go look in the catechism to research what our church speaks on marriage. But it's a discernment process, and it should be drawing you closer together as a couple, which then, of course, draws you closer to our Lord and Savior. Because this is, it symbolizes a Trinity in terms of we have the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Well, we have the three of us as a triangle, and as we draw closer to that Father, it should be drawing us together. When we separate from one another by contracepting or even just silly fights and disagreements, the farther we get from our spouse, if God's at the center, the farther we're getting away from Him. So this goes back to the core of what our church teaches. It's a discernment process. This is my lovely picture of families. So, under the umbrella of natural family planning, that's what a lot of us are representing. We fall under this. And on the left side there, you see the calendar, the ribbon method. People usually joke and call those people parents because it's pretty much been debunked. It doesn't work. It bases off of the fact that every single woman has a 28-day cycle. She ovulates on day 14, and there's no differentiating from that ever. And that's when things first started coming about. It was like, oh, we'll chart, you'll count your days out and boom, this is when, this is that. It didn't really work. It's kind of gotten thrown out. What's come in is what basically all of us at this table here are representing in one phase or another. There's basal body temperature methods. There's ovulation methods, which I represent. And there's sympto-thermal methods that kind of take both of those things in combination and combine them together. Okay? So, NFP. We look at this, we look at it as a method for all women. It can be used successively by women with regular cycles, women with irregular cycles, if you're breastfeeding, if you're perimenopausal, or if you have low fertility. This is showing that perfect usage is 97 to 99%. That means you're following the rules, you've taken a class, you've learned those, you're working with a mentor, that type of thing. So, plus the rate of the, see this is the slide Paula always does, so I always have to really read it or I don't say it right. The continual rate of NFP. So people who love it, they keep loving it, is around 93%. So they picked a method, they've used it, they fall in love with it, they stick with it. With contraception, it ranges from 43 to 42%. So somebody's tried the condom, oh, they don't like that, so they switch over to the pill, oh, they don't like that, oh, they switch to IUD. So it's very much jumping around. That's what that basically is trying to say there. And then, this is looking at more when you're trying to achieve pregnancy, that when you're using a natural family planning, 76% of pregnancy rate occurs at the first cycle of healthy NFP users. So I'm not going into that struggling with infertility or things like that, but if you have what doctors would deem a healthy, normal cycle, and you're trying to achieve pregnancy. So this isn't saying that you want to use the NFP and 76% of those people got pregnant. That's say when you're using it to achieve pregnancy, 76%. And then 20% compared to that 20% rate after one cycle of healthy non-NFP users. And that's basically what all of us are going to tell you up here is that you have to chart. When you go to a fertility specialist, guess what? They're going to send you home with a chart and say you have to start charting and chart for 6 months. And that's why I tell even my people who don't want to get pregnant yet or they want to wait, I said, but chart, 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 because once you turn that around, it's going to be a lot easier to conceive when you want to conceive. And so, where a lot of people just don't know. So, you know, in a way of not knocking on the contraception, but when we haven't been learned about how our bodies work and what's going on and the times to try, you could be trying whenever to try and achieve pregnancy. And that's why that percentage is low too. If you don't know when, that's the great thing about NFP is you're learning how your body works and when the time that the woman is fertile, and that corresponds with the men's fertility when they're fertile, because they're fertile all the time. Okay. So successful use of NFP requires an attitude and support, usually within the couple, and having support outside of that relationship, and also with the knowledge, taking a class, having a mentor, those type of things, and a positive attitude. And when those overlap, we get success within NFP. And so this is our late pope, who's going to become a saint soon this spring. But he was a great component of NFP. And so what's the difference? And I'm going to just try and skim these quickly because Katie kind of mentioned some of this and the difference of how it affects the environment and how it's not healthy for us. But when we look at biological differences, we get that NFP is a natural process, and we look at it that way as a couple compared to contraception, where it's looked as a medical condition. When we use natural family planning, we look at our fertility. That's what that's supposed to be. Fertility is a gift from God versus a problem that needs to be dealt with. We look also that we're stewards of our fertility. That goes back to the discernment process. Instead of being masters of our fertility, it's a gift that we're supposed to use and discern about, not just lord over and shut it off or turn it on when we want. It's going to be something about procreative and unitive and procreative dimensions of marriage are linked instead of separating those. And that's where I was saying that's the biggest thing the church has. It's saying they have to be together. We cannot separate that unitive and procreative part of our marriage. So it looks at a means to take possession of our sexuality, kind of like the stewardship part, and acknowledging, accepting that instead of avoiding the consequences that can come from our sexuality. And like Katie said, there's no harmed embryos when we use NFP, and there may be when we can use certain methods of contraception. This is relationally, it's looked at a shared responsibility when we're using natural family planning versus usually the responsibility falls on the woman when you're contracepting. Like that little YouTube clip said, oh, we don't have to talk about it. Well, why? Because the woman's responsible. Take that pill, do this, make sure it's in order. Communication about our sexuality and fertility is essential. That's the biggest thing that we'll tell you tonight. This is wonderful for your marriage because it forces you to talk as a couple, and it also brings you together in those times that you are choosing to either abstain or not to try and achieve pregnancy, where when you're contracepting most of the time, you don't have to talk about it, or it's very infrequent. Intimacy is multifaceted. Instead of being just linked to sexual intimacy, the times that you're choosing not to come together in the marital act, there's a lot of other things to do. And fertility is integrated into that relationship instead of being placed on a method. It's totally giving instead of removing fertility from that relationship and withholding our fertility from one another. So that's just a little bit more overview and comparison side by side. I hope that helps.
So the format for the rest of the evening will be basically a panel discussion where I've got some questions to grill our panel here, and then I will turn them over to you. But first I want you to know who you're talking to here. And I forgot to say this for myself. I've been married 10 years to the man behind the camera. And we have 3 children. They're 8, 5, and 2. We've used natural family planning since we got married. We took the class as an engaged couple. So I just feel really blessed, I guess, that somehow as a very young person I was able to figure out that contraception was not something I wanted to do. So I've never had those chemicals in my body, and I'm really happy about that. And all of our children were a result of saying, okay, Lord, we're open. And he said, okay, here you go. So just so you know. Tom and Ann, you got a couple minutes to tell us about yourselves.
We're from the
the Grand Rapids area originally. Ann's from Rockford. We met at Grand Rapids, now community college, was junior college. Ann is a teacher by training through U of M. I'm an engineer and work for Steve Case here locally. Been married 27 years, 8 children. All very happily welcomed and wanted. Yeah, pray for children.
Yeah, that's one thing. A lot of times you think, okay, 8 children, does this really work? And we just, yeah, I assure you about that. Part of the things too that we pray for each and desiring more children. When God, you're discerning, like we talked about earlier, discerning along the way, and just pray about what is God calling to us to as a couple.
Well, I'm Georgia Schmitz. I'm married to Matt, and we've been married for 12 years. And I'm also, I'm representing the Creighton Model, and so I'm a nurse also. Went to college for University of Grand Valley. That's where I met my husband, and we have 6 children. And I would echo what Tom and Ann said, is that each child for us was a gift received. We had our first child, and then we struggled for 2.5 years. We had 2 miscarriages, and one of them like kind of further along miscarriage. And then we were finally able to conceive. Our second child was born, and then after that I came to learn about the Creighton Model after our 4th child was born, and we had another miscarriage after him. And so we were kind of like, what's going on here? And I was invited to a talk at St. Isidore in Grand Rapids here, and a woman there gave a presentation, an introductory session about the Creighton Model, and she talked about how the Creighton Model has an applied medical science that goes with it called NAPRO-technology. NAPRO stands for Natural Procreative Technology. And so I was really interested in learning more about this NAPRO-technology, because I felt like there was something wrong in my body, and I had this concern every time we wanted to conceive, like, is there something we should be doing differently to prevent a miscarriage again? And so I met with the woman, went to follow-up sessions, and started to learn the method, and we used it to conceive our 5th child. And when I got pregnant right away, I was tested. I had my progesterone levels tested, which was recommended by my Creighton Model instructor. They call them practitioners. And so I found that I had low progesterone, and took progesterone and had a healthy pregnancy, and was able to help our 6th child also using the Creighton Model, just taking a day of fertility and that openness to God's plan. And I never would have said that I would have had 6 children, to be honest with you, but God is so good in providing for us, and just in that prayer really does open your heart to His plan, and to see how our children interact with each other. And it's such a gift to me. I was an only child, and I really just prayed to the Lord that I could have at least 2. And God is so good. He gave us 6 so far, and who knows what the future holds. But it's really exciting to me to find, for me with my nursing background, my husband is a physical therapist, and so that medical aspect of things is really exciting. The NAPRO technology has a lot to offer in the whole arena of infertility as well. And so we'll probably get a chance to talk about that later. But so that's kind of how we came into knowing Creighton Model.
I'm Christy Brown. We live over in East Grand Rapids, and we attend Immaculate Heart of Mary Parish. My husband Paul usually teaches the intro for we represent the Billings Ovulation Method, which is, as it says in the name, the Ovulation Method. And we've been married, it'll be 14 years in December, and we have 4 children, ranging from 13 in like 2 weeks. She'll be 13 down to almost 4.5. So we have girls on the ends and boys in the middle, or however sandwich you want to combination you want to come up with, but you have fun from that. We started out similar to what Katie said. We took a natural family planning class when we were engaged. It was required. We got married in the Lansing diocese. We're both from the Lansing area, and we took a class there for the Sympto-Thermal Method, and we actually used that for all 4 of our children. And then we were approached when my husband Paul is a physician with Metro Health, but he's an ophthalmologist. He wanted me to specify he's not an OB. So we get, with teaching NFP, that gets to be confusing a lot. But he came here for residency, and when we came here, we got approached to start to teach at Immaculate Heart. Some people wanted to kind of back off of teaching, and they wanted a new couple to come in. And so we started looking into, we had been kind of, I guess, not lazy in practicing, but not fully practicing the Sympto-Thermal Method, and we had kind of used it. And so this was probably after our 3rd child, and I felt very much when we started the process of looking into teacher training that I should be thorough and look into all methods. So I actually looked into about 5 or 6 different ones and spent a good few months looking into them and making a lot of phone calls and research and talking to people who had taught different things. And we came back to Billings for our marriage and where we were at and what was fitting our lifestyle. And so we got trained. We ended up putting it off, well, kind of over a year or so, and then we got trained when our youngest was 3 or 4 months. And so we've been teaching now for, I think 3.5 years or so, actually this October. So, but yeah, we have like Georgia said, we have a 13-year-old and I have a 9-year-old. So I did have a miscarriage in between there too, and I had to look into a few different things because I struggled thinking. We got pregnant right away and we were able to. We were kind of like, okay, we're open to this. You know, we weren't specifically trying, as they would say, but we were kind of like, we're open to whatever. And I was surprised to get pregnant in terms of, oh, my body works. Because I don't know, I was young and I was married and I didn't think that I would be able to conceive. And so then, and then to have trouble for our 2nd was really shocking because it seemed like everything went fine for the 1st. And then our 3rd came around, and those 2 were only 2 years apart, and that was just great. It was like, oh, because there I went into the approach of, well, it's going to take a long time, and it didn't. And then and we were able to use NFP to plan our 4th as well. And so yeah, that's where we're at, and that's where we've been. And happy to be here. And
Welcome. Such a range of experience. I know we have a really intimate setting here, but we also have a kind of a fan going, and so use your projection voices, guys. Okay.
Sure.
I'm not sure if everyone can hear everything, but just want to make sure we're speaking loudly.
So if you can't. Yeah.
So I sent these people questions, and I said, tell me your top 3, and nobody overlapped. Many thanks. So I chose the question. Because we have the benefit of having 3 different methods here, I just want to go right down the line and really quickly say what your method is called, and then how, like, what are the origins. So who started it? You know, where did this method come from? Go ahead, Tom.
Sure. So the Sympto-Thermal Method is what is CCL, what the couple teaches, and this was started by John and Sheila Kipley back in the
1973.
Yeah, and it was kind of in response to, at the time, the pill had come out in the 60s, and society was just latching onto this, going, this is the miracle drug, and the church was saying, no, this is not good for marriages, it's not good for families. So John and Sheila, they were a Catholic couple, they felt called to do something about it. They said, we've got to jump in with the leading doctors and leverage the science that we know about the human body and come up with a method that Christy talked about earlier about the calendar rhythm method doesn't work. That's something I know my mom practiced for a while. Didn't work. She ended up having 9 children, which Paul over here, my younger brother, is one of them, and thank God he's here because he's got a beautiful family now himself. So again, John and Sheila Kipley started the method. And they said, how are we going to teach this? The church is calling us to get involved. How are we going to do this? How are we going to transmit the truth of the church? And they said, well, the best way and the funnest way is couple to couple. So it became the couple to couple league. And we have, the league has teaching couples that basically hold classes like this and transmit the knowledge of the method. and also kind of give the witness, right? It's like, this is a great thing. So Ann and I, we aren't actively teaching now. We taught for 13 years in the Kalamazoo Diocese, something I neglected to mention earlier. And the basics of the method, it's called the Sympto-Thermal. There's the primary symptom that we pay attention to in the method is the cervical mucus that the woman has, a sign in her body. And then the thermal part is her basal body temperature and what that's doing throughout the cycle. So as a woman's cycle progresses, as she approaches ovulation, the cervical mucus changes. When she ovulates, her temperature goes up. And the shift we look for is 0.4 degrees. And then after that, after her kind of fertile time, the mucus will disappear or lessen. So the thing I like to talk about is a little bit is, so we look in the method at this 0.4 degree shift, and it's something the woman, you get in the practice of taking your temperature every day, you chart it, as was mentioned, it's really easy to do, and you have that cross-checking aspect of the symptom, the mucus, that you cross-check with the temperature. And the cool thing about it, Katie talked about hormone manipulation. I like to think about just how wonderful God's design is, that if I, let's say, I poured you a glass of water and I handed it to you and I'd say, okay, this water is, let's say, 70 degrees, and then I hand you a glass of water, this is 71 degrees, and you think most of us could tell the difference between 70 degrees and 71 degree water? Probably not. And here in this method, we have one, that the mind of man was smart enough to create a measuring device that can detect something as small as 1/10 of a degree shift in a temperature, and that God put this awesome system together in the woman's body, that just this 0.4 of a degree, if we pay attention to that we can tell, man, she's ovulated, something's happened, and if I want to get pregnant, I can take advantage of that. And if I don't, then we as a couple can decide, well, we're going to wait right now. So I think it's kind of a marvelous thing about just the temperature sign in itself that stated. I'm kind of fascinated by really simple things, but that God could just put something that fine in our bodies, and that we have the mind to pay attention to it and benefit from it in planning our families. So I'll give you anything else you want to add? Okay.
So, am I right, Tricia, that yours is more like the newest of the methods?
Not necessarily, no.
Then go next.
No, maybe because it has that applied medical science that's newer.
Okay.
But the actual methodology, the Creighton Model fertility care system is what it's called. It was developed by a doctor who went to Creighton University and who studied the Billings Ovulation Method. He actually worked with a couple who created the Billings Method. Wonderful people. And he was an OBGYN intern, and so this was part of his project. I guess what he was doing was he was looking at methods of family planning, and he was wanting to standardize them. And so he took the Billings method, he standardized it so that it could be looked at and researched. And then he, from the standardization, so that basically standardizing means he just took all of the information that was gained and he placed it into certain categories so that it could be researched and compared against each other. Then from that, he was able to deduct certain things based on women's, what they call biomarkers, and it's very similar, just different terminology. Biomarkers would be like what day she starts her period, what day she sees the mucus, and then she would document types of mucus. There was no temperature involvement, although he didn't say that the temperature was wrong by any means. It just, for the purpose of this method, it wasn't necessary. And so he began to see, his name is Dr. Thomas Hilgers, and he now still practices at the Pope Paul VI Institute. It's in Omaha, Nebraska, and through this research of his method, the Creighton Model, he was able to then find out that what might be causing some things like repetitive miscarriages, severe PMS, infertility in general, and then kind of use that information to develop a medical science and surgical procedures and hormone evaluations to go with that. And so it's really exciting. Like, I mean, at the Pope Paul VI Institute, it's an amazing place. They actually have on the top floor an adoration chapel, and Dr. Hilgers looks at this as his call to a response to Pope Paul VI's document in Laudato Si' that you mentioned. And so it's just a different methodology, but it's really based very similarly on the Billings Ovulation Method. So basically, the woman charts her signs that she sees every day on a chart, and those signs are then interpreted, whether it's a day of fertility or infertility. It sounds simple. It's a little more complex than that. Just like other methods, you have to follow up with your instructor or practitioner to gain an understanding of the method. But in the same way that other methods where you can use it during different times of your fertility, like whether you're all the things Christy mentioned, and if you're trying to conceive, if you're trying to avoid pregnancy, if you're trying to avoid pregnancy after having a baby, or like wanting to know when your fertility is returning, if you're breastfeeding, if you're premenopause, perimenopausal, all these things.
I teach the Billings Ovulation Method. It was developed in 1953 by doctors. They were husband and wife, John and Evelyn Billings. And actually, Dr. Evelyn Billings just passed away last February. So, but they have, this is based out of Australia. So if you came to our class, we have a wonderful PowerPoint presentation that has lots of different words. And, but we have to teach from their thing. They're very regimented on, because they don't want a copy of a copy of a copy. So we have some nice Australian words that we teach in there. No, it's just, this just, anyway. So there's ongoing research still being done over in Australia at WOOM is the international organization, is World Organization of Ovulation Method, which is Billings, because there are multiple ovulation methods. And then here in the U.S., it's BOMA, Billings Ovulation Method Association, I think, like USA, because Canada has their own as well. And basically, like Georgia, sorry, I was going to call you Kim. I know her sister-in-law. It's like, oops. And so we did break from Creighton in a good, gentlemanly way that Dr. Hilders went one way and Dr. Billings went the other. And the difference a little bit is just, instead of, like she said, standardizing, because he was comparing science in a different way, the Billings basically teaches the woman to be able to characterize her signs for herself. And so we teach in a way that you can identify fertile and infertile days throughout your cycle, to be able to pinpoint as close as we can as people when ovulation occurs, and to be able to avoid those days of fertility if you're trying to postpone pregnancy, or to use those days of fertility when you're trying to achieve pregnancy. And so that is similar, and we chart on a chart as well, and just following basically the mucus that we've all said here is the sign that we're looking for, and being able to distinguish if that's a fertile type of mucus or an infertile type of mucus, and being able to teach the woman to how her own body works, and be able to do that over a course of some months, and to be able to work in a mentoring relationship with her to be able to do that. And sorry, kind of blank. So yeah,
You'll get more chances.
yeah.
So all of these people have been trained, and that's really key. Like, the key to that 97 to 99% accuracy in using NFP starts with the foundation of taking a class from someone who has taken classes. So I will start with Georgia for this one. What training did you have to become a Creighton practitioner?
Okay. So to become a practitioner, the Creighton Model have to have an associate's degree of education, and then there's a application process, and you have to be accepted into a program by a certified teacher. And the program itself is a 13-month process. There are two education phases, education phase 1 and education phase 2. You attend education phase 2 at a set location. It's 9 days where you're immersed in the teaching, and there's testing at the end. You come home for 6 months, and you teach clients with the supervision of an educator who is a practitioner who has been specially trained and has a certain amount of practice, I guess, or knowledge base. Then you go back for education phase 2 for 7 days, and after education phase 2, you again have to have the educator come to your location, evaluate how you are practicing, look at all of your charts, and then you are allowed to through that process when she comes, that's kind of your examination, and she evaluates everything, gives you constructive criticisms and ways to do things, and then either you pass or fail based on that. And so overall it takes 13 months to complete the process. It's rather rigorous, but I think with the medical technology that's involved, it adds that element of professionalism that helps the NFP cause in itself. It adds that element of professionalism, and the training helps for even people in the medical field to look at NFP as something that is, that has value and merit, and they're like actually educated people who do this, because there's this mindset out there, calendar rhythm method, that people on farms practiced or something, and that's just not the truth about NFP itself. So that's how I learned.
Similarly, I guess, Billings, when we contacted Billings after I said I did a lot of that research, they wanted us to obviously have used the method. So like I said, we were kind of phasing out of one and starting another. So Paul and I took a class in Billings, and this is the way not to do it too, because we went online at first and read and then tried to self-teach. And thank God my fertility doesn't return after my children right away. If I'm nursing, I'm one of those very few that it really doesn't come back until I'm done. And so I was still just starting to get that back. And anyway, so I kind of read up a lot and then went to a class and realized I was really charting really wrong. But I was really thankful for Sympto-Thermal that I had a background of what I was looking for and how to chart. So I was kind of combining the two, which is the fault of switching methods, which is normal though. So we learned, and they wanted you to be practicing for about 6 months, and we really only were practicing for about 4, but because we had background in NFP, we did apply and were accepted, and we went to Chicago, north of Chicago for 5 days, and similar to Georgia, just immersed in training there. And then you take an exam on site, and then they actually then end up mailing you another exam that take it home a few weeks later, and we turn that in, and we pass that exam, and then you go into, when you pass that exam, you go into what is called your practicum, and you're set up with a mentor, and then she, for me, overviewed, instead of doing like a month, as Georgia was saying, or a certain amount, I had to have a certain amount of charts, so I had to teach a certain amount of people, and I think it's 10 or 20 that you have to follow them through teaching and mentoring first, so that they are able to use the method successfully on their own for what they want, either to achieve pregnancy or to postpone. And I had to have a variety, some nursing moms in there, people who are trying to avoid, people who are trying to achieve. And then after that, once I got all those and I worked with that woman, and that was probably about the same amount of time, about a year, life gets in there too. So I postponed for a couple different reasons. We were, buying and selling and building a house. And so I kind of kept putting things off, but then they work you into your final exam. And that is sent to you, and I had to take, and then they give you feedback. And so then it ended up being this conversation, because we used to have the same thing where your practicum advisor had to come out and watch you teach. And so now it's done with technology, how most things are, or online a lot. And so then I became, fully certified this past April. And then actually that same month, there's now continuing ed, like you would receive for basically anything these days, for teaching, for physicians. So I did a continuing ed course in April, because I do hope someday to be able to teach teachers the way I went and was taught. Right now I teach couples and women like yourselves, but I hope to one day be able to teach teachers and be able to be advisor myself. I enjoy that part of it a lot. So there's ongoing that I'd have to go to a few more of those to be able to get, it's a process and an engagement. So there's ongoing ed all over throughout the year at different sites and places like that.
We started our certification process probably around 1993, and similar sort of thing where you read a certain amount of material and then you take tests and send it back to them, and then they would give us feedback, and that would just continue on until we completed the whole course. And we were certified back in 1995, and then the couple league, they wanted to revise their materials and even their whole teaching program, and so when they did that, we needed to go through a recertification process, and that just came at a time in our life, after we had taught these about 10 years or so, or we altogether taught 13, but we had to go through the recertification, and at that point in our life, we were getting into other things with our children, and it just was going to be too much for us to go through that whole process. So, but anyway, it's the same sort of thing with teaching, but we didn't have somebody come out actually and oversee us teaching. So that's one difference that we had. But just to back up a little farther, is that we took our first class from a couple league teaching couple in the Grand Rapids diocese, and while we were engaged. So we started a marriage.
Well, we'll start with Christy with the, is there an app for that?
Oh,
Basically, are there certain tools that you need and ways to integrate technology with your method?
good question, Katie. Well, I have my handy. So a Billings chart actually looks like this. It's got these nice little boxes and things like that. And so if you want to do the old way, and a lot of times when I teach a woman at first, I say do it this way, because there's something about good old pen and paper, ladies, that it's easy to use, and it's just to be able to write and mark. And I'm very, I don't know, like hands-off in some way. Not hands-off, I shouldn't say that. But I'm very much like, this is your chart. You do what you want to your chart. I'm going to help, read your chart with you as you put it on there and stuff, but this is your chart, so do however you want with it. So, but there's a place that we use stamps, because one of the big things I forgot to mention, the thing I was thinking, was that Billings is accepted, the big thing it was to be able to be simple to use. So it's able to use in illiterate countries, or where people have a high rate of illiteracy, because we do use stamps. So as long as you know your red and green and yellow and white, and you know what a baby symbol is, you can use that. It's also it is the only form, I believe, of NFP accepted in China, where they limit it, because it's so highly effective. Besides contraception, you can use this form of NFP to limit, God forbid, to your one child in China, which is their right. So that's another big thing. So that's why they use that. So if we were going to equip you with the class, we would equip you with a chart, and with your stamps, and your booklet that you go. This is a short, small booklet that you get in the beginning. There is an app for that, and it's nfpcharting.com. Your first month is free, and then it's like, I think they now charge by 6 months or a year, but it, I think, works out to be under $2 a month. The nice thing about that, there is one other one that Billings approves, and I'm sorry, but I forget the name, but I know that now nfpcharting.com is both on Android as well as on iPhones. And but the nice thing on that is you can select your teacher. So I have, because I'm a teacher, I have a whole list of students, but only I see it, not everyone in the Billings world. But then I can wonderfully pull it up on my computer and be talking to you for a chart review, and we're looking at both of the charts that way. And what the chart has on it is that you put in your date, whatever stamp that you're going through, if you're during your bleed, if you're during your fertile time, if different types of mucus we were talking about, we teach you what stamps to use, and then your description below that. And we just teach you how to describe the mucus if you are experiencing that. And that's what would go on your chart. So you date it and then do the day, the stamp and the description below it. And it's just like that on the app too. So.
The couple league does use a chart too. So you can look at this later, but like this top portion is 1 month, and the top section here is all for recording temperature signs. So as we were talking earlier, you take your temperature every morning, and then when you ovulate, when the egg is released, then your temperature usually goes up, and it stays up until you start your period. And then the bottom section down here, you would record your mucus, and it's like a day-by-day thing, so that you have your temperature coordinating with your mucus. And there's also another sign too that some women use is checking their cervix. And so all those three things put together helps you determine when your fertile time is, and so that you know if you want to, whether you're postponing or trying to achieve pregnancy, what you want to do.
And there is an app, it's called,
Yeah.
It's called like Cycle Pro on the go or something, I'm not sure exactly what the name of it is.
The Creighton Model doesn't necessarily have an app specific to it that is approved by it, but I teach the same way Christy does, whereas I give the paper chart and I tell people start with this, and then once you've mastered this, there are a number of different apps you can look at. There's, I don't know, I've seen at least 5 different kinds. I've only tried one myself, charting, because I wanted to try that to help people learn it. And then I have actually a client of mine is trying to develop something like a Google document so that you can share it during your conversations, rather than right now, if I'm doing a Skype follow-up with somebody or phone follow-up, I just have them email, take a picture of your chart and email it to me, and that way I can look at it and look at it. I see that more apps coming into play, but it's nice that there's a variety of ones you can choose from, as long as you have mastered the system already.
That's a very good point. This question is for Tom and Ann. And you guys can chime in too, but we'll start with them. How can a couple use NFP to both achieve or postpone pregnancy?
As we've been talking about, the mucus is like God has designed it so that the mucus helps to keep the sperm alive and actually can give it nutrients. And so that's like a woman's body creates that, and because God actually wants us to procreate in the world. So the mucus at the beginning of the cycle, there's usually no mucus, and then the mucus starts, and then it increases in consistency, becomes more fertile type of mucus, and then the woman ovulates around that time, and then the mucus then goes away or decreases. And that's just what naturally happens in all women's cycles. And so if you want to achieve pregnancy, you're going to try to have your relations in that fertile time of mucus, and then vice versa mucus. And then afterwards, just as a secondary checkup, that we talked about the temperature. The temperature rises after the woman has ovulated, and so you wait a few days after that temperature is up, and then the fertile time, non-fertile time begins again after that.
Anything else to add, or is that?
I would say the same thing as far as the mucus is the main sign that you look for. It starts as more sticky, tacky mucus. It progresses to more stretchy, clear, lubricative. And then after ovulation occurs, usually there's an abrupt change in the mucus. And so you can identify your window of fertility kind of based on that. And so the couple then discerns whether to have intercourse during those times or to avoid intercourse during those times based on their discernment process and whether they're wanting to achieve a pregnancy then. Would you say?
Yeah, I echo what they are both all saying in terms of distinguishing what type of mucus, if it's fertile or infertile. I would add that most women have mucus, probably 80% of women, throughout their whole cycle. So distinguishing what that is, that can be a challenge. And though we say up here, it's easy to learn, it's simple to use, but it is learning. So there is a learning curve, and so I don't think any of us here want to rose-colored glass that at all, rose-colored glasses, and saying that this will be fine, you'll get it like this, but that's why we're here to support you and try and help you, mentor you, and teach you. And then the other thing was that this, similar to what I said in the beginning about the percentage, like if you did want to achieve pregnancy using NFP, how the doctors, if you went to a fertility specialist, would teach you, would tell you you need to chart, versus that 20% contracepting. And that's just because of what these people said here, is because you are infertile after, in the beginning of your cycle for the most part. There are exceptions. And then after you ovulate, women are infertile at different times in their cycle. So if you don't know when those fertility times are and you're trying to achieve pregnancy, you could be trying at the total wrong time of the month. And actually, if you're trying at the most fertile time of the month, I think, the last I heard in terms of percentage, but even then, percentage of achieving a pregnancy is only around like 40%. Am I right on that? Okay. And so that's at the height of fertility. That's why we say that every child is a gift from God, because it is a miracle. That even if you are on the most fertile day and you tried and you didn't, it wasn't because you didn't do it right or you did it wrong, but it's only a 40% chance. Like, what a miracle that is, that they have 8 children and 6 children and 4 children. Like, how beautiful is that?
That really shows the balance too. I think, like, morally, where the difference is in contraception and natural family planning, and that when you're contracepting, you know, you're having sex and you're saying no, and you're separating that, and like kind of with the bulimia, like you're wasting the resources God has given you instead of just not eating, right? Like the dieter, you just don't eat, and there's nothing morally wrong about saying, I see you, Cookie, I don't need you today. Right? There's nothing morally wrong about saying, I love you, wife, but let's just watch a movie today. You know? So, just another thing to throw in there. Christy, you chose this question. What do you say to people who claim NFP just isn't effective? It doesn't work.
So, I really, I say, because I guess I echo myself in terms of, have you really tried it? Have you really tried it? Because I think there are a lot of misconceptions out there, like Tom was talking about the calendar method, and so, I mean, most people, I remember being engaged and going, my husband Paul was really strong on NFP, and it wasn't that I wasn't strong, it was just, I didn't know. I didn't have the knowledge. And just like our Holy Father and the church teaches us, it's not that we stop once we're baptized, or not stop once we're confirmed. We are called to continually learn and gain knowledge. And it's a pet peeve of mine, if you have a problem with something, that you need to find a solution or stop complaining about it. So if you don't know, then why not find out more knowledge and gain and actually try and use a method through counseling, through talking with us, through talking with friends of what's worked. And so I'm not just saying, you know, I'm definitely not saying to go home and try tonight to achieve or postpone pregnancy using what we told you. But I do tell people, have you really taken a class? Have you really tried to learn? Because I don't think there's any teacher out there in any method will just be like, yeah, you're right, it just doesn't work for you. I just don't believe that to be true. I never, to use a personal example of an analogy to something else, I never ran. I hated running. I still, in my mind, love running, but once I'm doing it, I don't always like it that first mile. But my friend of mine said, come on, we're going to do this race. Let's do this race a few years ago after we had our fourth really close. And I'm like, no, I can't do triathlons. I have never ran in my life besides from home plate to first base because I was a softball player. I never ran track, never ran cross country. She said, no, we got to do something. I trained, I learned, I took a program, and I ran 3 triathlons the following summer. I just ran the Grand Rapids Marathon on a relay with my husband's work just this past weekend. I never thought I would be a runner. I still will not even call myself a runner. But I ran 4.2 miles on Sunday, and I've been training for that. But I trained, I took the programming, I got on the computer and looked up, okay, I haven't run in a while, you know, I've da-da-da. So, and I would never, I don't have the best knees, I don't have all that stuff, and so I've had issues with that, but I never tried. I just said, no, I can't. I had surgery on my knee, I was a gymnast, I messed up, blah, blah, my joints, yada, yada. And, but no, I actually finally put, you know, money where what I was talking about and actually tried it, and look what I've achieved. And so that's what I tell people. Take a class, look into it, talk to people, and I think you can easily find something that will work for you and your spouse.
Thank you. Georgia, how do you respond when people, whether it's a man, a woman, or a couple together, say, NFP is way too hard, we would never be able to practice it correctly, not going to happen?
Boy.
You chose this question too, by the way. It's right here.
I should have reviewed those questions.
Yeah.
No, I would say, well, anything worthwhile is not always easy. You know, I would say in a similar fashion to what Christy's saying, you have to try it. If you think it's too hard, how do you know if you haven't tried it? Like, which classes have you taken? You know, so it's more of like questioning and drawing out to them. Have you really put the effort into learning it? Because if you put the effort into learning it and practicing it and following up with it, then it's not any harder than anything else. I mean, and I also, you know, especially for people who are contracepting and saying like the pill, for example, is advertised as being very easy. You just take a pill every day, da. Yes, but what do you, like those consequences of taking it, what are you doing to your body? And I tell people, if you ever read the warning, the list of, what is it, medical, yeah, the medical side effects. The first thing listed is death. I mean, if you're taking something to prevent a natural occurrence in having a child, that could cause you to die. And in women, it's very serious because a lot of women have died of blood clots from taking the pill and from preventing something that could be prevented just by avoiding a certain behavior at a certain time. And so I guess I would just say, try it. You know, if you think it's really, really that hard, try it. And the only way you're going to try it, if you really are trying not to achieve pregnancy during that time, well, then avoid genital contact for this short period of time to really give the method a chance so that you feel confident in using it, and then, you know, progress.
It's the worst thing that could happen. Do more dishes.
That and that devastating effect of marriages and on our culture and how that just affects down through the generations, and you want to be able to do something about it. So for us, the natural family planning was just a way to get involved, a way to help couples live the truth and love the truth, and be able to love each other in the way God fully intended. So that to us is the best part.
To add to that too, and just teaching the women, you know, to understand their bodies too, and what's going on in their bodies is a rewarding thing too, and just helpful for them to know and understand what's going on.
So that's why I feel that way, right? I mean, these internal changes, hormonal changes,
or just
physical changes. It's great.
I know, I remember just even getting the overview that you guys have given today. I remember learning that in our marriage classes, I think, and going, oh, that does happen. It was like someone said, hey, by the way, the sky is blue. And I was like, it has been blue my whole life. So it is amazing. Christy and Georgia, it's such a nice question. Do either of you want to talk about what you love about teaching NFP?
Gosh, I love the engaged couples, to be honest with you. And I love the couples who have, the scales have fallen off and they begin to see the light. Those who come because they want to change the way they're doing things in their marriage. And I've had a few couples with infertility too who have been able to achieve pregnancy with a little bit of medical intervention, and it's such a blessing. I feel so humbled to sit and talk to people about such an intimate topic. But I do think you said something, Tom, about teaching people to live with integrity. I mean, we all desire to live out this truth, but the world tells us, you know, all these lies, and you know, you listen to that, but you really know within that that's not quite how I want to live. And to be able to live this most intimate aspect of your marriage with truth and integrity is really a gift. And it prevents things like divorce. You're constantly talking about it. You can talk about mucus, cervical mucus in your relationship. You can likely talk about finances and communication and anything else really easily. So it's a real blessing.
I just kind of echo what they both said. I really love working with engaged couples. We also do Creighton at our church, and so to do this is just kind of wonderful. And I really love working with the married couples that come back and either started contracepting first or come back, or they're just like, okay, and they're all nervous, but then you see them come back, you see what, you know. I just love the relational part of it, and that, and to see women, similar to what Tom and Ann were saying, that they realize what a gift our body is and how God created it with a purpose. It's not just a fluke, that these things happen, and to be able to see when they start to see their patterns and things like that, and it clicks, you can see that. And I have joy right now too, because one of my clients, if you want to say, she's overdue. So it's fun now that I've been teaching a few years that I'm getting those people coming back now. And so you went through the time when they postponed, and then you went through the time with them like they're really excited, they want to have kids, and now they've had that one child or two child, wherever they're at in their walk, and now they're coming back. And she just called the other day, and it was just fun to just talk, because she's like, okay, so what should we be looking for after the baby comes, it's her first baby. So it's like just a joy to be thinking that she has time to think ahead like that. It's just like, I was like, oh, it was just so sweet. And so she's, so it's just the relational aspect for me, and being able to see a learning process for someone who doesn't come from a medical background or a teaching background by trade, it's been a lot of joy in that way.
You guys are awesome. So, in my opinion, the methods are all very similar and very different in the ways of looking at them. And when I think about like the ideal fit, I think that probably each method is the perfect fit for a certain personality, right? A certain state in life, whether you're entering marriage or after children or whatever, or maybe a certain like schedule, how you're, like there's all different parts that come into it. So, what do you think makes your method, like what kind of person would be a good fit maybe for your method, so that people here can kind of see who they may want to talk to after we're finished. I feel like Georgia hasn't started in a while.
I think I would say, as far as methodology, as far as like what the Creighton model has to offer, one thing I was drawn to that both of these methods also offer too, though, is that you can use it at any state of your reproductive life. That is very valuable. You take one introductory session, and then you follow up with the same practitioner. One thing I like, because of the standardization that the Creighton model offers, if you move somewhere else in the world, you can transfer your materials and go see a practitioner there and have that same follow-up that you would have with the one you're working with. I think it's important, though, to mention that you need to be able to communicate with this person that you're learning from. And so the Creighton model schedules follow-up sessions every 2 weeks for the first 2 months, so that you can gain confidence. And then after that, it's 1 month later. They kind of like let you go slowly. Then 3 months later, you talk again. But I really find it's valuable to have that relationship, ongoing relationship. So then the state in your life changes, like you said, like you have a baby, and then you want to come back, well, how do I use it, what do I do during this time? And okay, well, these are the instructions for this time of life, and we can meet a couple of times if you'd like to talk about it. And so I like that relational aspect of things. You really need to have somebody you can communicate with and feel comfortable talking about this stuff too. So that's nice. I don't know if it's really a benefit, but these all offer that.
What draws people to the Billings method as far as like how it would fit your personality or your schedule?
Okay, sorry. I was so intent on the first thing. I was like, what drew us, and because we did switch methods, and I liked the simplicity of it, was that I could learn this to fit me. I didn't have to compare or try and fit to Susie or Lizzie's method or what they were calling this or that. I really appreciated the fact that I could be trained to learn what my body was telling me. And working with someone and being consistent, I could see that and be able to use it. However, our marriage deemed what we were discerning to use it for, to either avoid or achieve pregnancy. And so that simplicity part of it was very helpful. It was very helpful in terms of that part of the aspect of it. I just felt like it was a simpler method for me at the time of something that I could see using until I hit menopause too. I think I can tend tend to be a person who can get overwhelmed, to be quite honest, and so to be thinking, okay, I have to find something to get me to that stage in my life, and this just came up, and I think it was just the Holy Spirit in a lot of ways too, and that I can say it just doesn't have to stress you out, it doesn't have to make you anxious, because I've dealt with that and I've battled with that, and so it was the simplicity on that that didn't have to take in a lot of other things that really drew me to it, yeah.
I would say one thing about the Sympto-Thermal that would be hard for maybe one state of life is if you have an irregular waking time every day as a woman, like if you're a nurse or something like that, because taking the temperature, you want to do that as close to the same time every day as you can during the fertile time. It's not
That's
critical, yeah, later in the cycle. But so if you had really regular sleeping cycles or working hours, that would be more difficult as far as the temperature part of the Sympto-Thermal Method. One thing about the Sympto-Thermal Method that is good is that after you've had a baby and then you're waiting for your fertility to return, oftentimes you can have the mucus may come and go a little bit, and maybe a little bit, we talk about a transition period there where you haven't gotten totally back into your regular cycles yet. So you'll have mucus that may come and go a little bit, and the temperature, if you're taking your temperature then too, once your temperature rises, that gives you a positive sign that you have ovulated, so that you know that you are in an infertile period of time then. So that's very helpful after childbirth. And then even in the premenopause too, you can get to a point where then the cycles start getting longer, and so your mucus may come and go a little bit more, and so again the temperature sign is a positive sign that you've ovulated, so then you know after that you are in an infertile time. So that can be helpful as far as that, so those time periods. But otherwise, yeah, I don't see any other major differences for your state of life.
Well, you all have been so gracious and so informative. I'm going to give our crowd here a little chance to stretch their legs and grab some water and whatever, and then we'll come back in about 5 minutes and open up for questions from you guys. And I do have another NFP versus contraception commercial to tempt you back so you don't leave.
One other point, just to, when you were talking about your differences or the way your classes are taught, just because we haven't mentioned this for us, with the couple league, you take 3 classes spaced a month apart is how they organize it for them. And so you learn the method, and then you come back after a month and learn some more information. But then at that time, the teachers get to review your charts and to help to see, if you're understanding. And then again, another month later is how they do that. And then as long as you, they have a membership type thing, and you get a magazine which also helps to give you information to help you along the way. But also, as long as you keep up a membership, which used to be like $20 a year, then you can go, like at any point in your life, like let's say after you've had a baby, you want to brush up on things too, you can go and attend another series free of charge to learn, or to get brushed up on things to refresh. So that's just something to know, because I know we didn't mention actually how the method is taught for the couple.
And then your teaching couple is always available for follow-up
Questions if you want to.
All right, here we go back from the commercial break.
Hi, I'm a contraceptive.
And I'm NFP.
And we pretty much...
I'm also NFP.
Wait, who are you?
NFP requires the cooperation between a man and a woman.
Seems like a huge problem in operations to me.
No, it actually builds upon our trust and understanding of one another.
You see, you're designed to take reproduction out of sexual relations. We're designed to keep the totality of sexual relations in perspective.
Love-giving.
Life-giving.
And bonding.
But what about pleasure?
Yeah.
It also builds his respect for me as a woman and increases our overall intimacy.
Who cares about overall intimacy? With me, you can get right to the fun stuff.
Well, NFP users actually stay together longer with almost no divorce. Not to mention, we always report more gratifying sexual relations.
Because we're not holding our fertility from one another, it's a complete find it very noble of them.
She finds me noble.
Your happiness disgusts.
We know.
Those guys are both priests now, by the way. That was a group of seminarians that put this together, which I love.
Seriously?
Yeah. And just to jump off of that, in the video, there was just a study released in July of this year, and the U.S. News and World Report ran it. The article was titled, "Devout Catholics Have Better Sex," study said. And just, it says, according to decades of research, devout Catholics have sex more frequently, are more likely to take their sex lives seriously, and are more comfortable with the idea of sexual pleasure than any other demographic, religious or not. And hopefully that is because devout Catholics who attend church and follow the teachings of the church are using NFP. And of course you didn't see that on the news, right? Like the big news. Unfortunately, the media is often against us. But I'm pleased to turn over the 4 panelists to you guys for any questions. And if you happen to ask a good question during our break there and think it might benefit others, either, again, here in this audience or these are all questions are all going to be posted to YouTube. So in a week or so, you'll be able to find them and kind of share them on Facebook and continue spreading the good news about NFP. Not that part, not when I'm talking about YouTube. That won't be on YouTube. But the questions might. So if you had a really good question, even if you've kind of gotten your answer, it would be lovely if you would share it with the rest of us.
I have 2 questions, and they're for the couple that went through the couple-to-couple-ing. I've never taken a class, but I have read that book, so my husband and I are vaguely familiar, just so you know. So I do have a background. And then we are currently expecting our 3rd, but thinking we should probably take a class. And does couple-to-couple-leave offer like classes tailored to postpartum?
Currently, they teach the 3 different classes that I mentioned, and then they also do have a special class just for postpartum too. But I'm not sure if you have to take the 3 in order to take the 1. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I wouldn't think you have to, but I think it's postpartum and premenopause. They kind of split off separate.
Okay.
Just because it's kind of specialized, and most engaged couples aren't so interested in that. So
Yeah.
So we have the number of somebody that you can contact to find out like the current schedule and.
Okay. I'll have to get that phone number and make it clear.
Gotcha.
My other question is, and my husband's at home with our other 2 children, but I'm sure this would be top on his list, is we've kind of found, from using that book, we were able to successfully space our 1st and 2nd child at 2 years apart. We wanted 2 years, and God gave us 2 years and 10 days, so we got pretty much exactly what we wanted. But one thing we kind of struggled with during that time was it seemed like it was always him kind of saying, is this a fertile time, is this not a fertile time? And he gets NFP. He gets it a lot because he actually used to work with breeding animals. He was a farmer, and it's the same thing essentially. But it was really hard for us to engage him, and I know he felt bad by maybe like feeling like he was nagging, and I guess so. How really do you communicate that together? I don't know if my question's
No.
okay.
You want to start? You're saying as far as how do you deal with maybe the desire on behalf of one partner versus the other, and maybe we should wait, and how do you talk about that through as a couple?
Yeah, that would be better.
Yeah. I think first from the man's perspective, I would say anytime your husband brings it up, you should be flattered that he is just madly in love with you. I think the other thing that sometimes I think the spouse or the female partner can be afraid to kind of show physical affection because it might turn him on a little bit. And I think sometimes she needs to take him in her arms and say, honey, I love you, let's talk about this, and be close, kind of with the expectation, like, I think it's important that you set the expectation right up front, like, I'm really not feeling like it's a good time right now.
Mm-hmm.
And guys like to be clobbered right over the head. Like, be direct with us. And I think that's important. That's, you know, my point of view. It's like, because if the guy hints at things and the woman is kind of wishy-washy, he's going to keep pushing, because men are the pursuers, right? And women are the prize. And I think if it's not a good time to be very direct with a man, but do it in like in a really loving way so that he knows he's not irritating you, but he's flattering you. And I guess that's the guy's perspective, what I would, kind of based on our marriage or relationship. Do you have anything to add?
You know, when I heard the question, I heard something different in that. I touched on it. It's really important. But when I heard your question, I was thinking like more logistically, like, how do I communicate to him that this is a time of fertility, or you know, rather than him having to ask, today, and so a lot of times with engaged couples, I teach them, you know, because when they're engaged, hopefully, and I encourage them, but they're not living together, and that the woman has the chart with her, and so the man can't look at the chart all the time, you know, but as a couple, once they're married and they're living in the same place, they can look at the chart together, and maybe even, I told couples, the man can actually do the charting, like maybe the man can chart the temperature, or release the stamp on, or write the description, and that sort of thing, and then it allows that communication. But I have had couples who the man really doesn't want a whole lot to do with it, and he kind of expects the woman to do the charting because he doesn't really understand it all, or doesn't have that desire to know about the mucus and all that stuff. So I had one couple tell me they had like in the bathroom they had a certain decoration, and if it was in this spot, it was infertile day. If it was in this spot, it was an infertile day. So I mean, just something as simple as that, depending on the level. Sounds like he would be pretty open about communicating those things, but you know, depending on their personality, something just simple as that can help with communication.
What you were saying did remind me too that with the couple league, they did encourage the man to be in charge of the temperature too, just to be part of it, so that so he understands what's going on, and then he'll ask you what the symptoms are, so he put it on the chart, so that helps him to know where we are in the cycle.
I think the other thing too is for like, you know, if Ann and I were in that situation, you know, and she might say to me, well, let's talk about it. You know, are we open to another baby right now if we were to get pregnant? You know, and the guy may go, whoa, you know. Yeah, maybe it's time to wait. We really can't afford it right now. Or whatever the reason is, you know, maybe it's just not a good time for the family. But I think to kind of bring it back to that bigger discussion about, okay, where are we as a couple and as a family, and is this what's best? Because there's always that wonderful consequence of our relations with each other, and it could be as profound as a baby. So does that get it?
Yeah, actually, everything that all of you said was applied to my life, so thank you.
Yeah. Good question. Yeah.
I have a question. How critical is the charting? And I ask this from the perspective of like, if I know it's infertile mucus, do I really have to chart that, or can I just not chart, and then once I hit fertile mucus, then I start counting and thinking about it every day, and then once I stop, it's like, okay, I wait 3 days and can carry on, which is what I've been doing. But is there a reason why I would have to go through the process of here's an infertile day and keep doing that, or can I just track the mucus once it's there? Does that make sense?
Are you talking to a specific method?
Well, I do your method.
Okay.
But maybe I kind of do it for, I made my own method.
No, been there, done that. Not always productive.
Billings mostly, yeah.
Okay. Well, it depends on how long you've been charting. Is the first thing I would say. Bring me your charts. If we were having a consultation, I'd be like, bring me your charts and see. Especially after your bleed or your period, it's very important because unlike the calendar method, we need to see a pattern, and those patterns can change because everything in our environment affects us. So your stress affects you. If you have young children, if you're nursing still, it affects you. If your baby drops a feed, that can affect your cycle. If there's a death in the family, if you're like me, I just
smoothed, and so that can all affect us, which means that our different patterns can switch. Now, if you've been charting a long time, and once we've charted your ovulation and seen that and waited, you know, the 3 days, I think we all do 3 days after that or so, then a lot of people will say it's a good thing to do, but once you know you're infertile on that side of the month, you can drop that. I don't encourage people to, because even if you're taking the pill, once you pass that, they're blanks, and they make you take the pill so that you stay in the habit of taking that. And I'm not comparing us to the goodness of the pill at all, but I'm just saying it's a good habit to have. Now, if you're coming to me and you're like, I've been charting for 20 years, and I know, and I can show you, then we would talk about it. But I do think there is, especially in the beginning part of your cycle, that can fluctuate depending on what life is throwing at you. Not like this, but over time, and so you're going to want to have that pattern to be able to view that. The end of your cycle, that's another question that we talk about more in-depthly with you on one-on-one if we did, you know, that I don't know if you guys
Go ahead. You're kind of saying, do you even need to do the charting kind of at all? You kind of know if you're observing along the way and you know where you are.
And breastfeeding also, so
Okay.
not even a cycle yet.
Yeah.
So then it's like,
Yeah.
I think I need to chart anything because I don't think anything's going on. Can I just watch for it and then?
Yes. Yeah.
I think that is different, yeah, too. So.
Saying like what you mentioned earlier too, with breastfeeding really can help to space the babies and your fertility doesn't return for a while. And yes, when that, we would wait a long time because that does seem like it's not worthwhile to just chart.
Same old, same old.
Yeah.
I disagree. I would say that, especially during the breastfeeding time, depending on the gravity of your situation, I mean, if there's a great reason that you need to postpone pregnancy right now, then you should be charting. But if there's not, and you know, if you get pregnant, you're fine with your husband and you're fine with that, that's okay too. But I say there's so many variables, like Christy said, irregular cycles, stress can have an immense effect on postponing ovulation, and you can have things that look like, that mimic ovulation, they're ovulatory events, but they are not actual ovulation. So by charting, you could see that better, and if you just stopped after the ovulatory event and didn't chart anything later, you would actually ovulate and conceive during that time unwillingly. And with breastfeeding, the Creighton Model teaches that the first 56 days after a baby's born, if you're exclusively breastfeeding, those are times of infertility. And after that point, though, the research doesn't really support a lot of that your period won't come for a long time, depending on how much you're breastfeeding, how much you're feeding the baby, or if you're feeding him at night or not. So the medical research doesn't really have a lot of support. Now I know the Kipleys have that book. I read that book, and so they have some medical support that does support that. But I've talked to a lot of people who feel like that's not as accurate, or they don't practice that natural child spacing, on-demand feeding, because they work or they, whatever happens in life. So I would say, after that 8 weeks, it'd be important to chart postpartum time, depending on the gravity of your situation. If you don't mind, you can go do whatever for a while, and as long as you're in agreement, you and your husband are in agreement about that, I think that's okay too. So it just depends on your situation. Did that answer? Did we all answer your question?
Probably more questions.
So is there?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I sometimes think that I always tell couples this because there's a question we ask couples like, are you complacent in your charting? And women will be like, yeah, oh yes, certainly. And I always remind them, well, when you become complacent, then you're really open to new life, and so kind of goes hand in hand.
But when I say I don't like not charting, I don't mean like not
Paying attention.
recognizing and paying attention. I mean just not
Writing it down.
Writing it down for something that's going nowhere.
Right.
But eventually it will go somewhere. And that's the thing I think Georgia and I agree on, is that it's very easy to miss that. And so if you're being regimented, I mean, even if it's just, you're not putting a sticker, but you're just putting a check.
Right.
That you're knowing, okay, yep, it's the same, it's the same. And what I always ask my clients is what is today? Is it the same as yesterday? Okay, then chart the same. If it's different, what's different? And name it. Because the minute you miss that difference, that's what goes to, okay, did you know you were open to life there? Because if not, that type of thing. So that goes back to the whole discernment question stuff. But I think it does, that's fine in terms of if it's a check or a dot that going, this is this, and you don't want to get out a yellow stamp and put, blah, again, a yellow stamp and put blah, if you want to just do that so that you are. But I wouldn't, drop the habit of that in terms of it, even though it is extended and it is like that. But
Yeah, it does get.
it can get monotonous,
You think I'm wasting paper here.
So, that's why I do like the online thing. I don't know if you've tried that either.
I
So
did
it's-
the
It's just a
on
click.
free.
Yeah, right, exactly. So I like that it's just a click that way, so. But yeah, then you can try it.
I'm not sure who to even represent. We took NFP Center down in Kalamazoo. You said that you did. It was like, we got married in Diocese Grand Rapids, and there wasn't really any, you have to do this. It was something we wanted to learn about. So we went down there. It was like a one-day crash course, almost 9 years ago.
Yep.
And so I'm at this point, 2.5 years, I'm not pregnant or breastfeeding, it's just me. And so I feel like there's points at which my cycle's a little wonky coming out 6.5 years. Where would be a good place to find like a review? I've been charting for almost 8.5, 9 years, but like in terms of, so yeah, we were trained in Sympto-Thermal, but it was a while ago, and sometimes you just like, I gotta write things down. I'm like, oh, I wish I had somebody to ask what's going on. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
After 9 years, I'm still going, what's going on?
Yeah.
Well, you've had a lot of
breastfeeding and
down with children
But
breastfeeding.
my cycle came back at 11 weeks and 8 weeks.
Oh, yeah. Yep, I have friends with that. That's not unheard of.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So I'm always very jealous of them. I'm like, no,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So where's a good source for review, or is there an online source? Occasionally we look at
The couple has like a home study course where I don't think I have it. So they do offer that where you can take it in I don't know other than it doesn't seem like you'd have to take a whole course, but
I think it might be good to, if it worked for you to call a local teaching couple, and with CCL that would be available, there's 3 or 4 in the Grand Rapids area that I think there's
brush
2.
up. There's
Yeah.
a lot
Look at
more actually.
charts.
Yeah.
There's, if you're looking for a couple just to be in communication with, I have a whole list of that I can put you in contact and get you emails. If that's what you're looking for, and you're not wanting to switch a method or retake a class, I think any of us would here be able to,
I feel like
be
I'm a
online.
little foggy on the
Right.
details.
Yeah.
Obviously, if we know the way space the children the way we want it.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Work, but it's
Right. I guess it's more, are you wanting to stick with Sympto-Thermal, which is obviously fine if that's what worked and you're most comfortable with. And so then it's just getting you in touch with, I think any teacher would sit down with you and be able to clarify some things that are foggy for you. So, yeah.
the one-day crash course didn't happen.
Yeah. But yeah, exactly. At least it got you some knowledge that you're using it though, so that's encouraging. So. Yeah, but I can get your information and pass it along to somebody before you leave tonight and stuff. So, because you guys are still in, not still in, but you're in Kalamazoo, right? So yeah, I'm in the Grand Rapids Diocese and I'm in contact with those people. So
There was, I don't have the brochures.
I
Somebody
don't
has
have
a
it either.
brochure
Yeah.
that has contact information for different couples.
Because it's buried on the diocese website. It's, no offense, it's
Yeah.
very hard to find on the
Well,
Diocese of Grand
yeah,
Rapids
we've
website.
been-
So, yeah.
I was gonna say, we went out to the couple league website before we came here, and just trying to see what classes were underway in the Grand Rapids Diocese, or are being offered this fall. within 100 miles, you have research criteria.
Really?
And I'm like, I opened it way between now and January, February, and it says no classes are being offered. I talked to Mary Ann Mansowitz, and there's 2 being offered now, and there's 2 being offered in February, but this hasn't made it onto the website yet, so if you didn't know any better, you go to the website and go, there's no one in the area and there's no classes being offered, which is totally not true.
Right,
So
exactly.
There's as Chris is saying, there's a lot.
And I didn't mean to knock the NFP.
Oh, no,
Sorry
no, no.
we did that. I mean, it was a great help. It was, well, I was over towards Lansing. My husband was in my husband-to-be was in Holland, and it's what.
Yeah, it's a one night drinking from a fire hose. Yeah. God bless you, you stuck with it.
Way to go.
Well, that brings up kind of a question though. Like, I'm just curious, if you had to retake a class, do you know the cost on classes or that sort of stuff? I'm just curious because we just often instruct other people like, well, there are these other methods. This isn't, for you. So
135 is what we just found out is now
for the 3 classes.
Yeah.
We charge $100, and that's for life. We do that as you do one group class usually if we have a group where we teach up at our home. My husband and I teach that class together, and then I follow up 2 weeks from there and out, depending on your personal chart. So it might be 2 weeks and then a week and then another, or then like Georgia was saying, as you're progressing and as your confidence builds, it goes on. But like I said, like the woman I used who's overdue now, she just called me back this week, but I don't recharge it. I charge that, you pay your first class, and that's good until, you hit menopause and you're set, so that type of thing. So that's how we do it.
Mine is just, the introductory session is a group session, and so you come in, it's $25 to come to that for a couple. And then you have to purchase a book and a chart. The charts are like $5 and they last you 6 months. So it's a rather minimal expense. Or if you choose to do the app, which is about the same. I did price them out. And then the follow-up sessions are $40. So, but I do also have funds available if people are having difficulty here. Like I had one couple that her husband had lost his job, and so there's ways we can work financially.
The couple league has funds available too, or at least they did. When I called back when we were engaged, and they said that we do know people that are willing to pay. So I guess it's if you feel like that's the issue, I don't want that to stop somebody. Just call.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of people. We do the same thing there.
And I have had parishes sponsor engaged couples too. So that's blessing.
How about like practical ways to remind yourself to like chart and all that stuff because you all have lots of children, and I have 3 under 5, and I imagine, because we do kind of a version of this, but it's really easy for me to just forget, and it's like, oh yeah, that was 3 days ago, and
I'm sorry. The other thing we do is, like I said, my husband and I teach, and we require that first group class to be taught to couples, unless there's some real reason. And that's not a Billings requirement. That's one our parish, because our parish priest requires for engaged couples that you take an NFP class as the couple. And so I think that helps, and we kind of glean that from CCL because they're couples teaching couples, couple to couple league, and that's what we first learned. But I see that as a huge, not just resource, but as so that you're not going home and saying, well, this is what I heard, and then it's the whole copy of a copy of a copy. So I think that kind of touches your question too, and it sounds like your husband knows the NFP and stuff. So I'm not bashing the men at all in this, but it more in terms of when you learn as a couple together, you're hearing the same thing, you're talking and discussing the same thing, and then it's another person to remind you. And so because it's a couple thing, so it shouldn't just be your responsibility. So it should be that your husband can ask you, and my husband still does this to me, I looked at the chart and you haven't charted in 3 days. And I'm like, oh, it's here, or it's in the notebook and I haven't transferred, But that's where online has helped for me, because we chart, and Billings charts at the end of every day, at the end of your day. So if you go to bed at 9, if you go to bed at 11 if you're a nurse coming home at 6 in the morning. It's whenever your day is ending. For me, that's a lot easier because I'm a night person. That's why I'm still talking and it's 9 o'clock. Where I don't talk at 9 o'clock in the morning. So that for me, it's just kind of part of, you know, I brush my teeth, I put my PJs on, I grab my book, I grab my phone, I chart, I read. It's kind of part of my routine. So maybe finding something like that, not that if you're not tech savvy, I mean, that might not work for you.
I would say routine, so routine, and put that chart somewhere where you can see it. Put that paper somewhere where you can see it, and like under your pillow, or you know, I don't know, something like that.
I was going to ask, do your husband and you share the same hours as far as waking and sleeping? Okay, you know what I'm saying? Is one, if you're relatively the same, what Ann and I do is, I've been working a little bit different, a little earlier morning hours right now, so she just takes her temperature on her own in the morning, but again, it's a night thing. And the chart's on her side of the bed, but thermometers, that's my job. And
Actually, the chart's on your side, the thermometer is on that, yeah.
you are correct.
Yeah.
Correct. That's right. Yeah, so before
So we just
yeah.
will record the temperature every night.
Yeah,
So
that's my job. And
But
that's,
once in a while, if I'm not there yet, if I'm doing something, then he doesn't get, if they're, you know,
The
symptoms. So then that, like you were mentioning, sometimes it's up here, like, okay, I gotta remember again Tuesday.
or if
Yeah.
a day or two goes by and, you know, I got a temperature every day and there's no symptoms, it's like, whoa, what do you want me to put for Saturday, Sunday, Monday? And her memory is amazing. So anyway, yeah, we tackle it together and we keep again, the thermometer and the chart right there as physical reminders, like, okay, this is something we're committed to and we got to do it. So, but like I was going to mention the earlier question with Ann with extended infertility from breastfeeding, there's times where you really slack off the charts. I mean, we do because it's just there's no point in charting nothing. I mean, that was just a personal situation. We had a lot of history, like, okay, her fertility is that there's no sign of anything for a long time, so we didn't have to worry about it. It's a little bit, you know, liberating. So it's kind of side benefit of our situation.
Right.
We just put the
But I
chart
mean, there
away,
would-
save a few pages.
But there would be times where then too, then when it starts getting closer, there would still be a fair amount of period of time sometimes before it would return, but there would get to be a point where, you know, you'd see more of the fertile type mucus and then, but then, yeah, we would have quite a few charts even of that before anything would, you know, I find
Yeah,
other
and
things.
based on Ann's condition too, like Georgia said, if your reason for, you know, avoiding pregnancy is big, then we want to be more disciplined about it. But it's like, we're pretty open, so we'll see what God has in mind, so everyone's rigorous about it.
I think I would say to you too, because you said you have 3 under 5 years old, and that's very overwhelming. You know, that time when they're all little like that is very overwhelming, but when you get to the time, like my oldest is only 10, but I'm telling you, there's a huge difference in having 3 under 5 when you have a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old to go get that diaper and catch this screaming child or close the baby gate or whatever it is, there's that difference. And I remember feeling very like, I can't handle any more children at this state in life, you know. But God is so good and gave us that 2-year gap that we were able to space them out. So I think it gets almost easier. Sometimes you look at large families and you think, how do they do it? Well, they do it because they have a lot of little helpers, you know. And so I think it's just a different perspective because when you're in the trenches where you've got like 3 people wearing diapers every night and people still waking up in the middle of the night and it's overwhelming, you know. But it passes.
Well, and God gives you youthful energy. You know, when you get to our state, you know, we always thought it got easier, and it's challenging in other ways. You know, your team's calling at 10:30 at night from other states, and you're like, oh boy, you know, they're on 2 different time zones or whatever. And you're like, we're going to bed. You know?
Yeah.
We're signing off here. So anyway.
We have kids in college, not a state right now.
Into technology, it depends if you are tied to your smartphone or not, but if you are someone who has a smartphone, you could set a reminder that would pop up, like, ding, chart, or even a Google reminder if you're on your computer, whatever.
That's a great idea, Katie. See, that's where my See, I said I chart on the phone and then I stop there because I'm not that tech savvy to even remember. Oh, get a reminder. I'll be out a little bit.
Oh, it should be done, but you just hit on something that is it's such a big myth. I don't think we can leave without addressing it. Does every NFP family have more than the standard amount of kids? Like, if I practice NFP, am I signing up for 6 or more? 4 or more?
No, I'm just really blessed. No. No, I mean, I don't know. No, I think there's something that speaks in the marital relationship. Would you guys say? It's the way you communicate within marriage, and the natural product of your marital love is life. And so if you are blessed to not have infertility issues and that sort of thing, then naturally I think the couple is more open to that.
And I think we have to be careful as Catholics on either side, because just as NFP can get stereotyped as, oh, you got 8 kids, you must be Catholic, or Mormon,
Right.
you know, one or the other. And just as flippant as that can be and offensive, we can be very offensive to the other side of that person who is either struggling with infertility, or it might not be infertility, because grave reason for me might be different than you and you. And that couple that only has one because that's all they can handle, or that couple that only has 2 or 3, and we're not in that bedroom, we're not in that relationship, we're not their God, and we shouldn't be the one to judge. And so I just caution, because it's on both sides, and as someone who did struggle with miscarriage and had those people make those, well, why don't I have another one? It's so hurtful, because there's so many people. My brother and sister-in-law haven't been able to, you know, carry a pregnancy to a live birth, and my niece is adopted and she'll be 5 in January, and they're on the adoption list again, and they would love to have kids. So some of that's personal to me, personal to my family, but also as a wonderful group of Catholics that are here, that we should just be very cautious that as much as we get stung with those jabs or those nasty looks in the, you know, grocery store, there's the people on the other side that are envying you and not saying anything, or that just, that can't. So it goes both ways. It's a very personal thing, and it's a very big discernment thing that it shouldn't be taken lightly on any side, you know.
So there are couples. Some of your students have 1 or 2.
Yes.
Okay, just to make it the fact out there.
Or none.
Yeah,
So,
I was to say none.
Or not there yet, you know. It's not like you come to a class to go, okay, you're in my class and now I have to get you pregnant. Like, that's probably a stereotype, you know, but I'm like, no, I work with, most of my clients are 90% are engaged couples. So they're obviously starting out in life, and I encourage them to discern, and most of them are wanting to postpone pregnancy for this time. So.
Yeah, I would say most of mine are either engaged or struggling with infertility. So 2 students play.
You guys have been wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much. And God bless your families.
Thank you, Katie.
And we'll go on the internet.
Thank you all for coming.